Hey there, this is your teacher, Mr. H, and you're watching History in a Hoodie. Today's episode is about European exploration of Georgia, where we will learn all about the earliest interactions between Europeans and Native Americans. I can't wait to find out, so let's get this show started. What are we learning about today? The standard for today's lesson asks the students to explain reasons for European settlement of North America. Before we start, let's go over some vocabulary for today's lesson. Mercantilism was an economic plan where wealth is created by exporting more than is imported. Raw materials are natural materials from which a product is made. During the age of exploration and discovery, there were really just three major powers that had great enough interest in the New World to send explorers and to colonize the mainland of North America. These were the British, French, and Spanish. Each of these three groups were interested in the land for various reasons, but the one overlapping reason that was common for all three was economics. The French had a very simple interest in the New World, the fur trade. They discovered early on that much of the backcountry lands were lush with small mammals to turn into fur coats for sale. This was well before PETA existed, so they never had to worry about any protesters for animal rights. The French were mostly interested in the territory running between Louisiana and Canada, though they did develop a small colony in the Carolinas later on. The Spanish were after simpler treasure, literally treasure. Their major goal when exploring the New World and developing colonies was to find riches, specifically gold. They had heard rumors about a fabled city of gold, El Dorado, where they would become the richest and most famous men in the world. The Spanish conquistadors searched and conquered South America, Central America, Florida, and most of the western U.S. in search of gold, and along the way they also expanded their empire to the glory of their king and converted Native Americans to their religion. Finally, England was solely focused on the economics of the region, but their plan was a little more complex than the French or the Spanish. Their plan for building permanent colonies was to ship home all of the natural resources and raw materials for production. Then they would sell the finished products back to the colonists. The English invented international trade without having to deal with those pesky other nations. This plan is called mercantilism, an economic plan to export more than the country imports, and it made England very wealthy. So what? How was Georgia impacted by European contact? If you look at a map of Europe over the years, you'll recognize that it doesn't change much after a certain date. The land is filled in, countries established, and nowhere else to grow. England, for example, is on an island, and doesn't have anywhere else to go when the space gets used up and the resources start to run out. European countries wanted more, but there was nowhere else in Europe to get more without starting a war, which they still did from time to time. Instead, each of these European powers saw the New World as a get-rich-quick scheme. Go in, conquer, pillage, be home just in time for the celebration of how awesome we are. What European countries didn't consider when they went into North America, South America, Africa, Asia, or Australia is what impact they were having on the environment and the cultures already there. The French fur trapping trade was so successful that they placed several small mammals on the endangered species list, if there was one back then. The Spanish conquered and killed in search of a treasure they wouldn't find. And the English were perfectly happy routinely pillaging resources from the colonies. No wonder we decided to revolt. This is all just another perfect example of how Europe screwed up the world. Nice job, Europe. Now what? What am I going to do with this information? Is there anybody here interested in living on Mars someday? Elon Musk and his SpaceX corporation are starting to accept candidates right now for a journey about 10 years from now. Someday soon, there will be a colony on Mars. People will build habitats, attempt to farm and harvest water from the harsh landscape, and develop a society on another planet. Now, Elon Musk isn't ponying up the billions of dollars from his company to fund a little sightseeing tour and scientific expedition. At some point, the chairpersons and stockholders of SpaceX will expect to make some money off of Mars, and that will be done by drilling for valuable resources to ship back to Earth. While I'm not necessarily worried about ruining the habitat or culture of some Martians, there is something to be said about learning from our history and not destroying another pristine environment just to make a quick buck. There may be consequences involved in humanity exploiting Mars, consequences that we cannot see now, just as the Europeans could not comprehend back in the 1500s. Wow, so learning about European exploration of Georgia is really important for us to understand. I'm glad we learned it today. Are you ready for some review questions? Which country was significantly motivated by mercantilism? The main reason the Spanish explored North America was to... Which country was not a contender for land in the New World in the 16th century? Mercantilism was a method of getting rich by having more blank than blank. I hope all of you learned a lot from today's episode of History in a Hoodie about exploration of the New World. If you did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Just kidding, I don't care about this stuff. But do make sure you study this information. Bye now.